Hi, I'm Brooke Lierman. I'm a state delegate representing part of Baltimore. I'm a civil rights and disability rights attorney and a mom of two, and I'm running to be your next state comptroller. You're watching The Soul of the War.
Hello everyone, welcome to The Soul of the War. My name is Alexis Branch, and today for our candidate spotlight, we will be interviewing Brooke Lierman, candidate for comptroller throughout the state of Maryland.
Hi, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course, thank you for coming. Such an honor. I'm so proud of you and what you've been doing on your campaign. So thank you so much for taking the time out to come and speak with me.
It's my pleasure. Happy to be here.
So let's just jump right into it. Just tell me about family life. How did you get into politics?
Great. Well, so I was born in Washington, D.C., grew up in Montgomery County, and really grew up in a family that believed in public service. And have always had that with me. I went off to college, actually started a mentoring program when I was in college. I actually worked on some political campaigns, but then I decided I really wanted to be an advocate and be able to work with people and help them raise their voices up to be heard. So I went to law school. I found my way back to Maryland, and for the past over a decade have been practicing attorney. I work at a firm and do civil rights law, disability rights law. I represent low-wage workers. I've represented a man who was wrongfully convicted and served 21 years for a crime he didn't commit. Got one of the largest settlements in Baltimore Police Department history for him. But in my new adopted hometown of Baltimore, I also saw there were just so many things that needed to be done. Some real injustices and also just government failures. One quick example, my very first day of work, I tried to take the bus to work. Shouldn't have been a big deal, except the bus didn't show up. And I kept trying to take it and then soon realized just how unreliable the Maryland Transit Administration, or MTA, was. And, for me, I could afford a car or I could walk to work, but for the 1/3 of Baltimoreans who don't own a car, when the bus doesn't show up, it's not a disappointment, it's a disaster.
Absolutely.
And it is for small businesses who are relying on them too, and relying on workers who use public transit. So I became a transit advocate. I also started doing a lot of pro bono work, representing community groups, looked at the state of our schools and was really frustrated by that and said, you know what, we can do better than this. And thought, maybe I could help. So I threw my hat in the ring and ran for delegate. And here we are.
Here we are. Wow. Yeah. So what made you do that transition from delegate to comptroller?
Well, that's a good question. I've loved being a delegate, and I've now represented District 46 for the past 8 years. My district is every neighborhood around the water in Baltimore City. So it's Fells Point, Federal Hill, both stadiums, but also 8 public housing developments. I also represent, actually this morning I was at the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, praying for the people of Ukraine, but I also represent all the Latino communities in the city as well. So it's a really diverse district. And over my 8 years, I've learned so much about how government works and how to be a truly effective advocate, really getting things done for my communities, building new schools, rec centers, passing legislation on transit, on education, on transparency. But there's this amazing opportunity this year, right? Because for the first time since 1998, there is an open seat for state comptroller. And after my years on the Appropriations Committee and the work I do on pensions, I understand just how uniquely situated the comptroller is to be a huge and important advocate on income-based issues and on the economic challenges that are really confronting Marylanders today. So I'm excited to be diving in and to work with Marylanders to really reimagine how the comptroller's office can be an advocate, can lift up families, can lift up communities, can help our small businesses, especially our minority-owned and women-owned and immigrant-owned businesses, to make sure that they're succeeding and thriving. So there's a lot that we can do, but I think we've got to do it this year.
Amen. Nice. Well, can you define for us, what is the role of the comptroller?
That is a great question. The number one question I get on the campaign trail, people are like, oh, you seem really nice, but what's a comptroller?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, the most one that I get is that, we just see it on, that's the taxpayer, the tax collector.
Yeah. So there's 3 things that I encourage people to remember about the comptroller's office. The first is that it's one of only 3 independently elected statewide offices. We've got the governor, the attorney general, and the comptroller. And so it's just essential that we have somebody who's using their voice to be the people's advocate, right? To focus on the challenges that are confronting our state, like the racial wealth divide, like the economic challenges of climate change, like ensuring we have enough money for schools, right? Those are huge economic challenges that we face, and that statewide official has to be a voice and advocate on them. The second role of the comptroller is that the comptroller sits on a number of very important state boards, a whole range of them. Two that I think are the biggest are the State Retirement and Pension Board and the Board of Public Works. So the State Retirement and Pension Board oversees almost $70 billion of investments for almost 415,000 state retirees. So hugely important position. I've actually chaired the Oversight Committee, the Joint Committee on Pensions, and I've been on that committee for 8 years. So I've worked a lot with our pension system and know that we can be doing better, right? There's more that we should be doing. And then the Board of Public Works. So the Board of Public Works is this really fascinating 3-person body. It's the governor, the treasurer, and the comptroller. And nobody else in the country has one. We are very unique in state governments. We are very unique because all major expenditures, contracts, and whatnot have to go and be approved by the Board of Public Works. So do you want to build a new school? Do you want to buy more buses? Do you want to do affordable housing development? All of those, buying new online systems to government to run on. All of that, it all goes through the Board of Public Works. Even a grant that like a small arts nonprofit is getting from the state, the Board of Public Works has to approve it. So it's a hugely important board. And the comptroller, I believe, is really supposed to be the people's advocate on that board. Because the governor really goes along with the agencies often, and the treasurer is appointed by the General Assembly. And so how the system is set up is for the comptroller to be the one connected to the people. So those are the boards the comptroller sits on. And then the third role is, I am sorry, the tax collector. But or tax refunder, right, in a good year. But even there,
It's been a good year. Everyone's been saying they're getting their refund.
They're getting their refund. But even there, so much work that we can be doing to make sure that the tax system is easy for small businesses and families to use, that people know when they qualify for credits like the Earned Income Tax Credit. So there's just a lot that we can do to make sure that the comptroller is a true taxpayer advocate.
There was something brought up when I interviewed Tim Adams. He was talking about contracts, non-compete.
Yeah.
How are you going to work to change that?
Sure. So there is a big problem. So our procurement system, how we spend our money has to be incredibly transparent and has to be understood as one of the most important functions of government, right? We are paying taxes. We want our money to be spent efficiently, but also effectively, right? We want best value, right? We don't just want lowest cost. We want the best value for our dollars. And the Board of Public Works is really central to making sure that happens. Because it approves all contracts. And one of the problems that we've seen over the years is that we do have too many sort of single bids, right, or non-competes, where somebody just comes in, it's one company, and there's nobody else, right? Or maybe often that happens when it's an unsolicited bid, and a company comes in and says, hey, look what we can do for you, and government says, oh, okay, great, and takes. So the problem is that then there's no competition, and so you don't know if you're getting the best value, right? But we have a lot of challenges in our procurement system. We do not spend nearly enough money in the state, and we are not nearly meeting our MBE goals, right? Our minority business enterprise goals. We need to do a much better job at removing barriers for Black-owned businesses, women-owned businesses to really be involved and to help be a part of our procurement system.
What would you say are some of those barriers, though?
Sure. So one is prompt payment. We do not pay quickly enough of the time. And if you're a small business or you don't have the cash flow of sort of a large business, you can't wait around for the money, right? You have to be paid on a rate, as quick, in 15 days when it's due. I think another issue is just transparency, not understanding the process, not knowing when a bid is due, or also we often make I think the contracts very onerous. I remember when I was applying for college, they just started something called the Common App, so that you could apply to a bunch of different colleges using one application. I mean, there's no reason that we can't have more of a system where we use more of a common app, right? Things have to be tweaked and changed for different contracts, but we should be lowering the barriers to people applying. And, we should be thinking through not just the huge high dollar procurement, but how do we reach out to maybe somebody who's never been involved with the government and say, hey, this is the Department of Natural Resources, and you do a great job at landscaping in your neighborhood. Have you ever thought about, getting a contract with with DNR? Maybe it's not a, $500,000 contract. Maybe it's just, hey, we need you to do, supply lawnmowers, or we need you to help with us here and there, and you're just on an approved vendor list, right? It's really hard to know how to get on those approved vendor lists. And so we just need to do a lot more intentional outreach to make sure that money is helping us build generational wealth in Maryland among Black business owners, among immigrant business owners, right? Women business owners here in the state.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Sure.
If elected, you will be the first woman elected as comptroller for the state of Maryland, but you also informed me that you will be the first woman elected independently statewide. Awesome.
Yeah, so we have never had a woman governor, attorney general, or comptroller, our three independently elected statewide offices. We've never had a woman, so I think it's about time.
It's past due.
Yes,
it's past due. And with you breaking glass ceilings, what are some of the challenges that you have faced being a woman and being extremely close to possibly winning this race?
Thank you. Well, I think it's, look, I'm a woman, I'm a mom, and so certainly the logistical challenges that any mother would understand. I have a very supportive husband, but I've got all the babysitters' phone numbers in my phone, right? So sometimes it's me, doing all that, and it can get a little crazy. But also I think, sometimes people, we haven't elected a woman at the top. And so it's important for people to see that it's possible and to make sure they understand it and about why it's so important to have that representation. And to one of the things I like to stress is that, I hope that I'm the first. I don't plan to be the last. Amen. And I want to build bridges and have an incredibly diverse staff so that we are building up leaders in the comptroller's office who can then do the work in their communities and, eventually run as well. So.
I'm glad you said that. That was actually one of my questions on, with there being so many retirements in the comptroller's office, how you planned on filling those retirements, especially right now when it seems like so many people are just not trying.
Yeah, well, we are really facing a staffing crisis in state government in general. We do not pay our state employees nearly enough. What we ask from them versus what we give to them is, it's embarrassing. If we want to have a high functioning government, we need to be willing to pay for great people. And we compete, right, with the federal government. And so, the comptroller's office is competing both with county tax collection and also the IRS, right? So we have to make it really worthwhile. We have to empower people, give them a mission, and pay them what they're worth. And I'm excited to be focused on that, to be a strong proponent of building a skilled and excellent workforce. I'm really proud to have the support of AFSCME, the union that represents all the state employees, and look forward to building great relationships with them.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
That's awesome. Okay, so I do want to ask you this.
Yeah.
As a woman, breaking glass ceilings, running for this office, getting major endorsements, can you give young girl 3 tips to running for office and being successful?
Sure. I think, first and foremost, it's about being yourself, right? You have to be sincere. You have to be true to yourself. You have to figure out what you want to do, what your passions are, so that you can always be authentic, right? 2, I think it's about just constantly learning, meeting people in your community maybe you've never met before, going to new businesses, going to new parks, new areas, taking courses, whether it's formal learning or informal learning. I have loved being a state delegate because I've just learned so much about the neighborhoods that I represent, about small businesses. I was touring the port recently. I've loved learning about the Port of Baltimore and all the, the economic engine that it is. So I think constantly looking for ways to learn and grow is also really important. And along with that, grabbing some mentors, good mentors along the way is really important. And third, I think, it's so be sincere, be yourself, learn along the way. Third, I think it's persist, like never give up. If you have a dream and a goal, and you're being yourself and you're educating yourself and you're working hard, just persist, like keep going. I really do, have faith and think that you will find your right path. Maybe it's not apparent from the get-go, but just persist and you will find it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank
Sure.
you for that. And
Yeah.
you mentioned faith, so I'm going to bring it up too. Are you a woman of faith?
Yes. Yeah. No, I'm a practicing Catholic,
Okay.
and I belong to a Jesuit church in Baltimore, St. Ignatius, which is a wonderful social justice ministry, and it's been a place that I'm proud to call my faith home in Baltimore. I will say one of the joys of being elected and now also campaigning is getting to share other people's faiths
Cool.
and learn about how they worship and how they practice. So, going to an AME church one Sunday and going to a mosque another day, and I was at the Ukrainian Orthodox Church
So
today. I mean, it's so amazing. And, Maryland was the birthplace of religious freedom. And so I...
What?
Yes,
Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
going back in history, Ark and the Dove came over. It's, religious freedom was born here. And so I think it's so special and really fascinating to see how different people share their faith and worship.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How has your faith played a role in you overcoming challenges while being in office?
Sure, that's an important question. Certainly I have good days and bad days, as anybody does. But I think that my belief in the value of human life and the value, understanding, and true belief that God made each of us unique and special helps me remember that even if I were not to get reelected, even if I didn't win an election, I still have value, right? I'm still here for a purpose.
Yeah.
And I have to keep searching for what that purpose is. I remember reading at some point that a former U.S. senator used to say to himself every morning in the mirror, think about how would you vote if this were your last day in office, right? To not always be trying to do what it takes to get reelected, but to just focus on doing the right thing.
Amen.
And so I think about that sometimes and think about, in the context of if I wasn't reelected, I would still have value, right? And I also will say, I think that faith helps remind me that we can't leave anyone behind.
Amen.
Right? Everybody has worth and value, and I believe that part of the role of government is to help people reach their God-given potential.
Amen.
Awesome. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for sharing that. You are making history with this run.
Trying.
But you and Tim are both making history.
Yep.
If he's elected, he'll be the first
African-American.
African-American elected statewide. What makes you different from Tim? What makes you unique?
Sure. Well, we come from very different backgrounds. But I think what I am excited about is being able to bring all that I've learned as a delegate and as a civil rights attorney, really fighting for people who are underdogs, who have faced discrimination, who have faced adverse conditions in workplaces, fighting for kids with disabilities, taking that knowledge and also taking the knowledge of how government works and how we can get things done to be a truly effective advocate for people in the comptroller's office. So I'm looking forward to being able to take all that I've learned and putting it to work for more people.
Awesome. Thank you. I love your background in law. I think that is really, really cool. So we kind of talked a little bit off camera about the sample ballots, and the reason this platform is here is to educate the public.
That's great.
So that people don't have to use sample ballots. Are you planning on using a sample ballot or being on a sample ballot this election cycle?
I mean, certainly I hope to be on sample ballots. I hope to be, I'm really proud to have the endorsement of a number of elected officials around the state, including the Speaker of the House, Congressman Jamie Raskin, Congressman Steny Hoyer, Senator Joanne Benson, and others. And so we'll see. I mean, I think we're not quite there yet, but I think it's important to let people know who is running, and that's what I'm trying to do right now.
Yeah, and I know with the big statewide races, sometimes you won't even know what sample ballots you're on at the time.
That's what they tell me. I mean, I haven't experienced it before, but that is what I've heard.
I just pray you're on the right ones.
I pray too. Yeah. I know. I hope so too. Yeah.
So, jumping back into the Board of Public Works, can you expand a little bit more on how you plan to use the Board of Public Works to benefit Maryland as a whole?
Yes. So one thing to keep in mind about why this election is so important is that we are going to see more federal money coming into Maryland over the next 3 or 4 years than at any other time in our lifetime. Because not just ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act that passed last year, but also Joe Biden and our fabulous vice president and the Democrats in Congress passed the Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act. And that bill will send billions of dollars to Maryland for roads, for schools, for water infrastructure, for broadband. All of that money will go through the Board of Public Works. So we have to be really intentional about how we use that money to make sure that we are using the power of the purse to really build generational wealth and to build for generations. So, I plan, if elected, to have an equity officer in the comptroller's office to help make sure that our agencies, when they are starting to think through contracts, are using an equity lens. And are using a racial equity lens, and that they are reaching out to new businesses, to Black-owned businesses, to maybe businesses that haven't been involved in procurement before, but have been doing great things on the ground that we've heard about. I also think we need to make sure that we're thinking through how to prepare now for climate change.
Absolutely.
Right? Which, I mean, if we don't prepare now, our kids are going to be left holding the bill.
Yes.
And so we don't want to build a new school and then have it turn out that school's in a floodplain, right? So we have to build a brand new school, or we have to raise it up, or we can't use the first floor, right?
Yes.
So we also need to make sure that we're thinking through the effects of climate change and planning now. So I would like to make sure that the comptroller's office is really the convening point for making sure that we are using that money in an equitable way and in a way that looks forward at climate change and building a more climate resilient state.
Awesome. Awesome. I love that. I have not heard anything or anyone talk about climate change when it comes to the comptrollers.
It's really important.
It is.
It's going to cost a fortune for us to deal with some of the effects.
To catch up.
Totally.
Yeah,
and
honestly.
And we should be, when we're building that new school or when we're buying new buses, we should be buying electric buses, right? We shouldn't be buying diesel buses that go through people's neighborhoods, right? We'll clean the air, improve public health, and they'll be quieter and they'll last longer, right?
Absolutely.
So we need to make sure that we're thinking through that money.
Can you define a little bit more the hat that you would wear as the regulator for state, I want to make sure I say it right, the oil?
Oh, sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the comptroller's office is sort of a small office within, it's a important office, but smaller within the comptroller's office, is to basically go enforce all of our regulations at gas stations to make sure that when you are getting that 87 unleaded, that's actually what's coming out of the pump.
Okay.
So the comptroller's office has an enforcement team that goes around and measures and checks in on all of that and makes sure that what you're getting is what you think you're getting.
For.
Yeah, what you're paying for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. If people walked away remembering one thing from this interview, what would you want it to be?
That I will be an effective advocate for them.
Okay.
I will have their back, and I'm going to make the comptroller's office be a place where they go to seek solutions. So,
perfect.
Effective advocate.
So I remember the name of the contracts now. They were sole source contracts.
Sole source contracts.
Sole source contracts,
Yep.
yes. But you answered it, so I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Where can people go to find out more information about you and your role?
Thank you for that. So yes, folks can go to my website, which is brookelierman.com. You can also follow me on Twitter, on Instagram, or on Facebook. On Facebook, I'm Brooke Lierman for Maryland. On Twitter and Instagram, I'm at Brooke E. Lierman. My middle name's Elizabeth, so Brooke E. Lierman. And yeah, I'd love to hear from you. You can always email me at brooke@brookelierman.com. Don't forget the E on the end of Brooke. But I really appreciate you doing this. I mean, I think it's just so important that we share information. And, you know, believe it or not a lot of people know that we're going to be electing a new comptroller.
Yes,
So-
and I appreciate you for saying that. I
Yeah.
think that it is really important for everyone to be able to have a seat
Yep.
at the table
Yep.
when running for office. You know,
I
I was
agree.
telling you I'm a huge advocate for public financing
Yep.
and making sure that everyone is able to run and actually run competitively.
Yep.
So creating this platform so that every individual is able to come on and share their piece and share who they are and get an opportunity to, you know, have a different outlook to other people would be awesome. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for participating.
My pleasure.
And coming
Yeah.
in and speaking with me. It's really an honor to meet you. I've
Likewise.
been planning on coming to some of your events to
Oh,
meet you
nice.
in person before, but I haven't gotten around
Yeah.
to everything. But I do plan on coming to one of your events.
Thank you. You're always
And
welcome.
thank you so much again for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.